Right, we are live. And funnily enough, we've got Alex just jumping on. So let me just add him now. Perfectly timed, Alex.
Live.
Happy New Year to everyone. Happy New Year to you guys. Yeah, happy 2025. And another edition of YEV podcast. And today we're going to be talking about Gully charging, about two-tier charging, if you like. We seem to be like level 1, 2, and 3 at the moment.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
No, we've scaled in height. Hang on, I'll just adjust my height a bit so I'm dead in the centre.
I feel
So it's
really
a
low
diagonal
now.
line between the
Really
three.
low. There we go. That's better.
Now you've ruined it now.
I know. I'm sorry. But yeah, no, I thought it'd be a really good idea. It seems as though there was some government guidance that went out. I think it was just before Christmas, and I sent out a post on LinkedIn. And I'm being more active on LinkedIn now, but my LinkedIn doesn't tend to get too many views. But I think it got about 150,000 impressions on this specific subject. So it's obviously something that's quite controversial, let's say, a bit like some of Kevin's posts that he puts out. So basically, the government put out some guidance around Gully charging channels and also pop-up chargers. So as a lot of people know, it tends to be a lot better financially to have an electric vehicle if you can charge on a night rate, because if you can charge on a night rate, you can, essentially fully charge your electric vehicle from anything from £3 up to, I suppose, £10 if you've got a 100 odd kilowatt hour battery pack. Before we start, I mean, let's talk about how we charge, and then we can talk about the two-tier and how people are affected by AC charging, and from a negative point of view, not being able to do it. So me, myself, I'm lucky enough to have a driveway. I've got an EO2 Mini Pro charger side of the house, and I charge on Eon Drive, which is, at the moment it's 9p, but I think we're going to change it to 6.7p per kilowatt hour. So my 70 kilowatt hour Tesla Model 3 cost me about £7 to fully charge. What about yourself, Kevin? How do you charge?
So I'm quite lucky. I've got two chargers at the house, so I can charge two cars simultaneously at 7 kilowatts, which I do occasionally. I do have to remember that if I've got, because I've set the battery storage to charge at that time, if I were to put the dishwasher and the washing machine on, I'd be getting dangerously close to the 100 amp fuse limit. But I've worked out, between my wife and I charging, we could probably do 2,000 miles in a month between the two cars, and it costs us less than 1 week's worth of fuel we used to pay in our petrol cars. Because I'm quite disciplined now. The cars are all set to not take electricity outside those non-peak hours. And genuinely, you can actually, 5 hours with Octopus, you can get a reasonable amount. You can get more than half a charge, which will get me my 70-mile commute easily and a bit more.
Alex, what about yourself?
I'm like the worst case scenario, I think. We do have a charging point. I've had a charging point here for such a long time that it was attached to a Vauxhall Ampera, and it was requested when there was 100% grant on a charger. So it's a really early ChargeMaster Polar unit, one of the oval ones, and it's only a 16 amp one, and the doors just randomly opened for no reason. Sorry. Which back in 2013 was fine when cars had like 22, 24 kilowatt hour batteries. Now I get something like an EV9 in, and I'm plugging. If I want to go anywhere long distance in it, I've got to plug it in for quite a long time, or plan it ahead. Which is partially my fault. Back at that point, you could pay £96 to upgrade to a 32 amp one, and I decided against it because I didn't know whether it was going to require other electrical upgrades to the garage. And looking back, that was a pretty foolish decision, all things considered. We're on a completely standard flat rate tariff, off-gen capped one, and despite all of these things, we've still halved our fuel costs compared to our last petrol car. So, but I mean, the Rifter's got a relatively small battery anyway, so the Rifter can usually, plug it in, and you can usually get a charge like overnight, almost or enough of a charge to, use it the next day. So it's never a problem.
So, as a lot of people know that have delved into it, if you're charging at home overnight rate, or even on just a normal rate, it's going to be less expensive charging publicly. I mean, example I'll give, if I didn't have a driveway, I'd be paying up the road 55 pence per kilowatt hour, which is ridiculous, really. And you might as well, unless you've got a particular preference to have an electric car, whether you like the power, you like the smoothness, you like all the benefits that EVs bring, service and maintenance costs lower, etc., etc., etc. You know, you're going to be paying a lot. You're going to be paying extra. What do you guys remember what the parity is? I think it's about 35p, isn't it? When we've looked before.
Yeah, we have looked before. I may even have the calculations here, but yeah, it's. I know that a public charges, the last time I looked into it, it was equivalent for kind of a typical 3.5-4 kilowatt miles per kilowatt hour car. You're looking at something equivalent to about 30 miles per gallon in fuel costs on the motorway.
And I know that from the stats that I've seen, you're talking about it's about 35% of the population don't have access to cheap charging. So either they're in a terraced house, they're in a flat, they basically haven't got the ability to have a night rate because they haven't got access to their car. So it's a massive, massive challenge to accelerate the electric transition for the, for the good of, cleaner air and all the rest of it. So it is a bit of a blocker at the moment, and the government, quite nicely, finally, because it's been going on for a while, they've been doing a few trials out there on these particular types of charging. Let me show you one now. So this particular one is one of the Gully type chargers. So if you could imagine, if you've got a terraced house and you can put the charger on the side of your house, and then you've got this gully that goes across the pavement, you can run your AC charging lead through that gully and then charge your car on your night rate. Happy days, nice and cheap charging. Now, that is get rid of the music, courtesy of EVA, that video, thank you. Now, at the moment, there are some projects out there, there are some trials out there for that type of, say, technology. It's just a Gully, isn't it, at the end of the day? There's companies like Turbocharge, Gully, and there's a couple of other ones out there as well. And it just allows people to charge cheaply if they haven't got a driveway, essentially. However, when I put that post out on LinkedIn, people went a bit nuts. But before I go through that, and we talk about, the pros and cons with this type of technology and other technology that's out there, let's have a look to see what other people are putting in. So, Dean, good to see you, Dean. You need to send me your address for winning that t-shirt the other day. In chargeheads@gmail.com. In my council region, Wales,
Rhondda Canon Tap.
It's Wales. 90% of the homes are late 1800 terrace miners' houses, yet the council is not forthcoming with trialing Gully or anything similar. Oh dear. They also strictly forbid any cable across the pavement.
This is the problem that isn't being solved. So the underlying issue with on-street parking is there's no national rules about whether you can or can't do it. So you have to get permission from your local council. So even though you can now get government grants for installing on-street chargers, probably they haven't cured the fact that in order to get that grant, you have to have a cable management solution in place, and you have to get the permission from your local council. It's not solving those issues, and even this guidance as well isn't solving those issues. It's all set at a local level. And to me, I can't help feeling that a little bit of a kind of a national framework in place where it's like, look, you can do this if it's for EV charging, and you don't need like additional permissions and so on. We'll take control of that centrally, but you have to follow these rules. There can't be a trip hazard. You have a handful of government approved, tried tested solutions that manage those cables going across the pavement. It's such an important part of it. And interesting what Dean said. I mean, that's my car is actually serviced up in Kilvunneth, which you'll know. It's my mechanic quite often says that if you look at the street outside where the garage is, it is that there's a row of parking down one side, there is a thin pavement on the other with a railing alongside it. He said, how are these people ever going to be able to they don't have garages, they don't have driveways. How do you deal with charging for that? You need, hubs, or you need some sort of solution that allows them to go electric. Otherwise, as you say, there is this two-tiered charging system. Interesting that the one thing that's come up last August, and it is starting to come up in conversations and news articles at the moment is, and I've touched on this a little bit before, is equitability of this EV transition. I mean, there was a bit of this with the broadband switchover and kind of not leaving communities behind, where rollout was focused on cities and it benefited certain people. At the moment, I mean, a lot of new cars are sold into company car fleets. That's great. Salary sacrifice thing. It enables people to go for those vehicles. But there was a report that came out last October before the budget that was saying, I think it's something like 66% of company car drivers earn 50,000 or more. And it's less than 10%. It's like 7 or 8% are under, and under, I think, 20K. Like it's really, I mean, it really is weighted towards high-end earners. And that market is growing, and it's great for kind of putting those vehicles onto the market. But the people who can get those vehicles get the biggest savings on tax, but also then get the cheapest running costs, because they quite often, if they're a higher earner, they've possibly got off-street parking, may well have solar panels, may well be on a lower rate energy tariff. And it's actually started to come out. Some of the interviews that and conversations that I've had where people have said that they're kind of employers are providing access to workplace charging at a discounted rate for employees to fill those gaps, where they're kind of going, look, we want to transition our whole fleet to electric. We recognise that for some people, that's actually asking them to take on more in terms of fuel costs because they haven't got a home charger and they're relying on public charging. So giving them a convenient, at least kind of bearable, if not as cheap as having their own charger place to plug in, is a really important part of that transition. It's such an important foundation.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this type of charging solution is going to help, but it's not going to help everybody. Flats is still a massive challenge, and I think we do have this kind of 2-tier charging model at the moment. But thinking about the positives, and quite a few of the comments that were on the LinkedIn post that I put on was, what about the theft of copper wire? If it's charging, it's locked into the car and it's locked into the charger. So you really have to, I don't know, cutting tools or something like that. They'll only do that once, I'm sure. But I think a lot of people think that AC home chargers have got cables attached to them. What are they called? Oh, goodness. Tethered. Yeah. So if it's a tethered charger, it's got its own, the charger has got a cable coming from it. Whereas mine, I just keep my cable in the car. So I think a lot of people are like, where are you going to put the lead? Or people trip over the lead. I don't think that is the case. In terms of theft, I mean, if something's charging and someone tries to, I don't think that's really going to happen. Like I said, I think it'll only happen once. It'll probably be a lawsuit.
It's a very low value cable at the end of the day. It's not, you'll get pennies for, it's not like people see these thick cables on rapid chargers and they think there's a lot of value in them, when actually there's not a lot of value in those, because most of it is the liquid cooling, because they've tried to save money on copper, so it's got a liquid cooling jacket.
Those rapid charger cables that are being cut, I don't understand. I don't think it is actually theft for them making money. I think it's just theft because they're just trying to cause issues. Because for the sake of 30 quid to go for stealing, I don't think anyone would, in their right mind, would do that. I think it's just going to be, I think literally the theft of, I know it's slightly off topic, but I think that type of theft of the rapid charger cables, I think that's just to piss people off, to be honest, and just to stop any kind of charging issues, increased charging issues. I've been pushing my employer to install EV charging at work for many years. I've organised 30 easy charger installs installed in total. We now have EV owners in work who don't have charging at home. Oh, that's good. That's good news.
Yeah, we've got a couple of easy chargers on our depot.
Yeah, they're pretty popular, the easy ones. We need lots of level 2 chargers on streets and a system where you can swipe your card and charge goes to the household bill, agreed rate, including cheap overnight rate. Yeah, I completely agree. Government needs to push EV charging at workplace. Yeah, it's cost, isn't it? The cost of net zero, which always comes up. I'm not sure if I don't want to mix my words here, but I think the cost, it's a big thing. Everyone's struggling at the moment, and it's
an investment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an investment in a long-term future, isn't it? The fact that the cost will be far higher if temperatures rise and stuff, because you'll be able to spend multiple billions on flood defenses and everything else. So it's a long-term gain for relatively little investment when you think of possibly the other outcomes.
No, absolutely. I think there was a few things talking about the Gully charging, because there were 3 types of charging mentioned in the guidance. There were the ones that pop up and you can like remove them, that will go in the pavement. Obviously there's the lamppost charging as well. I think one of the comment that rings true is the fact that if you've got one of these Gully type solutions, is you don't necessarily have that space outside your house all the time. And I suggested that maybe you should talk to your neighbours and potentially suggest that if you are looking to have an electric vehicle, maybe we could do some shared charging and that sort of thing. But and then everyone's like, no, I don't talk to my neighbours. They're this, that, the other. And it's not a silver bullet, is it? It's just another small solution of a bigger problem. I think the government need to get involved more, really, don't they?
Yeah, it's still guidance, isn't it? It's not rules still. It's kind of pushing in the right direction. It's not actually, and that the issue with not having a space outside your house is interesting. The grant funding for home chargers actually specifically says you can claim this. You can put a charger on your house. It doesn't guarantee you that space. It doesn't. What's the word they use? It doesn't mean that you're guaranteed a space outside your house. It doesn't give you.
No. Don't put a cone outside your residence. I think is one of the things as well, which was quite. Good that they actually mentioned that, because I'm pretty sure there's some people out there that probably would do that.
Yeah.
Which would.
That's why we need, as Foxhound's Follies has been saying, this is why we need this system where once you get the infrastructure in place, where you need a system where it almost doesn't matter who you're plugging in, where you're plugging into.
Yeah.
It fills it back to you, so you could be using a neighbour or somebody down the street who you've never even spoken to. You could be using their charger. I suppose the issue then potentially is that you have certain chargers where they're getting used all the time and they're getting worn out, and they're maybe attached to a house that somebody only uses it rarely.
I think this is where people start to then get all the conspiracy theories about control, because then it's control because they'll know that you're charging, and it's not about control. It's about making it practical. The same as lots of people, when I mention on a LinkedIn post about smart meters, all go off on, but I've saved so much money by having a smart meter because it allows me to benefit from off-peak charging. And with companies like Octopus, you can get an agile tariff where it's actually, they pay you because it helps manage the grid better. Because there's certain things you don't need to put on at certain times. You don't need to charge your car straight away. You can basically charge your car when there's too much electricity on the grid, but people just don't seem to get that.
I think the problem is the government's not really looking long term. There's no real plan. I'm not going to go on about EV planning, chaps, don't worry. But there doesn't seem to be any kind of plan to make it work. And I think with 2-tier kind of charging, where people that don't have their driveway and can't benefit from that sort of technology are going to just stay in petrol and diesel cars, because there's just no real incentive, and the government clearly haven't got enough money to be ploughing money into it. So I think it's going to go on for a while. If I'm being honest, I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, and I think the issue as well is there's a lot of people that it's not just we've talked about the terraced houses. There's a lot of new developments where they're trying to design them around not having cars, so your spaces aren't near the. You've got assigned spaces, you've got a space you want, but it's nowhere near your house. You've got a driveway, but it's not near your house. And because of all the cuts and stuff, I mean, if you look at lots of the councils in the Welsh area, they're no longer adopting housing estates. So basically, you pay a management fee, and any work you have done, if you want to add a charger, you have to negotiate and pay a fee to that management company to allow you to do that. And that's why I think it needs that framework to say what should be allowed and what's reasonable, because these companies can charge an unreasonable price. I've heard of people saying they want 20, 30,000 to dig up the street to get your space when it's only a few meters, because that management company has to assign the workers to do it. It all has to be done by them, and they see it as another way of a cash cow. You can think of a lot of these estates now, you have a management fee. The biggest ones I've seen are that management fee is determined in January. And if people on the housing development don't pay that management fee, you're also responsible for the legal fees for them chasing up the payments of those management fees. And I think there needs to be proper frameworks, because these things haven't been thought through.
On a related note, I know somebody who wants to go EV. They have a garage. They live in a private estate, and it's a gated estate. The row of garages, they own 2 garages, and they have power within the garage. But the garages are on a business tariff. All of the garages are on a business tariff, and they pay into a shared pot. Some of the neighbours have started charging EVs there. Others have got things like freezers and so on running in there. Basically, each of those garages needs its own meter that then meters out how much energy they've used. But if you've been, I guess, then you get into issues like with people who've done very well out of that system as it is, probably don't want to have their energy metered and suddenly find they end up paying twice as much for the energy in the garage. But they can't get. I don't think they're able to get like home charging stuff on it, and they can't tap into that tariff. And all of those garages need to be individually metered, and all the charges within them would need to be metered in some way to make sure that to manage that energy use. And it's tricky because it's then meaning that people are reluctant within that environment to actually go off and get an EV or even a plug-in hybrid or anything that kind of reduces can reduce their CO2.
Well, it looks like the government are going headstrong into 2030 ban for petrol, diesel. I think that it seems to be still debating whether it's going to be hybrid or plug-in hybrid. I think that's still kind of ongoing, but it does seem that there is not going to be actually. I mean, it's only 5 years away, which is going to go quick.
It's outrageous that we still don't know. I mean, this was what 2017, I think it was, that this was announced. And it was back then. It was something to do with a significant electric range would allow you to be on sale at that point. This is it's ambiguous wording. I mean, I remember. I mean, I've been freelance for 6 years. I remember going to events as an employed journalist. So before I went freelance, people were asking. Actually, I say people. It was Toyota were asking, what does significant mean? Like, what does that mean? Because you could argue that. A Toyota hybrid with a mile, effectively a mile. I mean, no, it doesn't work that way. But like a mile of electric range has the ability to drive on electric power. That could be classed as significant zero emission capability, as opposed to a mild hybrid, which doesn't. I mean, no. I think we started on mild hybrids, but the line's been blurred for way too long, and it's passed through how many prime ministers now? So we've had, I mean, it would have come in. I'm not sure if it came in under Theresa May or Boris Johnson. I think it was Boris Johnson. We've had, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss, and now Keir Starmer as well. And we still haven't sorted it out. Nuts. No.
I mean, there is the opportunity of, is it connected curb, where you can charge people. I think Dean mentioned it earlier, where your neighbour can charge on your driveway and you can charge them a certain amount. Which I think shared charging moving forward, certainly it's been talked a lot about in the circles that I'm in the businesses that I'm talking to at the moment, shared charging of fleets. I think it's going to be shared charging of local residents as well. I don't know what that looks like, because obviously some people will be up for that, some people won't. It all depends on how much you use your charger. Someone like my dad, who he hardly charges his car, he hardly does any miles in it. And he's got opportunity of, people to use his charging facilities whenever. There's so many examples, but it just doesn't seem to be as easy, does it?
Yeah, and I think
petrol station. I hate going petrol stations. I hasten to add. I don't like the cost. It's a pain in the ass. You do have to wait. It does take more than 5 minutes. Yada yada yada. But it's there. It's just easy. But I know we're in the transition, but I just wish there was some clarity. I really do.
Yeah, and I think there are some issues as well, because if you share your charger, you're only allowed to charge them. Technically, you're charging them for the space, because you're not allowed to sell them electricity, because then you have to be a CPO or an energy distributor. So there's lots of rules and regulations around that, which are a very grey area. So you have to operate as a CPO. That's why a lot of charging, if you have public chargers run by the council and stuff, they run by someone else, because they're then the CPO, because you have to charge 20% VAT if you're selling electricity.
Oh, shit. Okay, interesting.
So it's what they need to do is what they didn't do with the charging regulations is they need to have the EV community involved a lot more. So the EV associations, because look at the mess we had with the public charging regulations. Yes, contactless is good, but they didn't make the simple distinction between AC and DC charging. So DC charging, yes, contactless should be a must. But on an AC charger, by the time you put a credit card reader on it, when you've got multiple ones, it gets very expensive. And by saying 8 kilowatts, that means that all of those three-phase ones now have to be derated or disconnected. So, I know an organization I've worked with that's got a number of 22s. And yeah, the red legacy rights last for so long. But you're thinking, well, I'm going to have to derate that charger. And lots of companies with three-phase supplies did 22 kilowatt chargers to benefit their fleet, and it was a bonus. You would, but now they may have opened those chargers up, and now they're thinking we can't open them up because we can't afford to run contactless payment things. And I think that's what's going wrong with all these guidance. It needs to be guided by people within the industry, and not like the companies necessarily, but the independent, the EVA England, the EVA, those who deal with a lot of the users. So as a consumer organization, to say what needs to be done, and they need to listen to that.
Yeah, I mean, Foxhound Follies mentioned Ed Miliband. I've not really seen him get really involved much in charging. He tends to be involved more in the kind of the bigger energy projects, but certainly I can send it over to him because it's it's worth him understanding what the kind of ins and outs are. A lot of the CPOs were caught out a few years ago by not charging their customers 20% VAT, but 5% instead. Like selling electricity to a customer at home, government made the CPOs increase it to 20% VAT. Yeah, I mean, with the government putting it in, it would have to be fully taxpayer funded public infrastructure. And I think that will go down like a lead balloon with that's a massive political hot potato. I think, especially with what's happening at the moment with all the stuff that's going on in the political world. But I think you're right. I think it's having that charging, having chargers everywhere on the streets and being able to tap, just to be able to have enough. But it's so complicated, isn't it?
I think we would have struggled. I mean, the Rift is a great car for what we need, but with a range of 130, 140 motorway mile range of probably about 150, 160 in summer, and with the around town and so on. Without a home charger, we would have found it quite difficult to go for that car, and also quite expensive. It's not a very efficient EV as EVs go. It makes a huge difference. I mean, it's the linchpin, I think. You can do it without, especially if you only need something smaller like a Kona or something, and you're prepared to plug in while you're doing a shop at Tesco. In our local, both of the big local Tesco's around here have both got rapid and AC chargers in place, so you can do a top up while you shop. Stuff like that's great. It helps, but if you're going on a long journey, do you want to go and sit and wait in Tesco for half hour, 45 minutes the night before and get home realizing you still haven't quite got 100% range because you've had to do that trip back? I mean, it all eats away at it, and you're dealing as well with when you're looking at kind of people who are buying, say, some of the cheaper EVs on the market where they've got limited range as well and slower charging speeds. It's a barrier in terms of that used market as well. It's not just the new market and the people with the company car savings and so on. It's that whole second-hand market as well that needs supporting.
Because a lot of people have said on comments I've had on LinkedIn posts and stuff, is that basically EVs are made to make the wealthier. And actually, as much as I hate to admit it, there is some truth in that argument, that actually it's the old adage of it takes money to make money. And if you can afford to have, generally someone with a driveway is going to have slightly higher income. And then you've saved more money. So, I know that it costs me pennies to drive. But I know people in more deprived areas, they're paying far more. And they're paying out more in expenses a month, sometimes more than I'm paying towards my car lease, just to have that. And then you think, well, we've got to do something about the fair and equitable charging. I don't know what, and I think it's going to be a number of different solutions. And if you can do something simple like an Octopus Electroverse card that works with how many different networks, you've got the power card that works with how many different networks. Surely it's not hard to put an RFID chip in chargers to then link that to your electricity tariff. And with all the technology now, because we all know that with the energy company, there's when you have Octopus or you have Eon Drive, it's not actually the electricity is no different that's coming to your house from Octopus Eon. It's just they have the systems to work out how much you've used and to pay for it from the generators. So surely that system must be able to work on an individual level. So you tap on anything and it just comes out of that supply. There must be the technology to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking that when I was at a Tesla charger after a Christmas do, this is late November, I went to the Tesla charger before I went home because I was down in Winchester going up to Northampton, and there was only one space free. And what I would think was happening is a lot of people that don't have chargers at home, they go there in the evening, they charge up on the off-peak rate, and then they take it home because the off-peak rate's like 35p. And I mean, I think I probably would do that, especially if you don't have to do it that often. I mean, it is a bit of a pain in the arse, but if you can whack a Netflix on or something like that, it's not the end of the world, is it? But not everybody's got a Tesla. So
I remember the good old days of Ecotricity, and I say the good old days, there were some issues which I'm skimming over, but the days of it being free and where you could kind of pop to your local service station and just plug in for half an hour and get most of a charge back FOC. If you're prepared to go and combine it with, I don't know, going and having a Burger King or going to pick up some shopping from the little Waitrose or whatever that's there. Or I'm outing myself as a Waitrose shopper again.
Yeah, well, I remember those early days. We had a Renault Zoe. We never charged at home when Ecotricity was free because the charger was 4 miles from our house. So we just So that Renault Zoe, again, it shows the state of battery health. That first 2 years, it was basically rapid charge from 0 to 100% because it was free. And it still ended up like a 97.8% state of health after 4 years.
There are the odd, I know that there's one near me, which is free still, but I think it's like 7 kilowatts. It might not even be that. It might be 3.5 kilowatts. And, it's not really worth it. I know it's only just up the road, but you don't want to sit in your car. It's just inconvenient, and no one's got the time these days to do that sort of thing. But I had a Citroen EV Berlingo here in Shetland, and when it broke down, no one could fix it, could not sell it or get it scrapped, and was not allowed to put it on get it fixed in Inverness.
Presumably that's the ferry to get it fixed.
Right, got you. Yeah. Oh, that's a bit of a pain. Yeah, it's well, luckily we've got companies like Cleveland EV, Cedar, they do repairs on batteries. That seems to be becoming more of a thing now. I mean, if Cleveland EV weren't around, I mean, it would be I know there's a couple of other EV specialists out there, but Cleveland EV have really, really done great work.
Yeah, I've seen some recent posts from them because there seems to be on higher mileage early Renault Zoes, motor bearings are going, which Renault want to charge for a whole new motor for. But I know that Cleveland and other ones have got the system now to replace those motor bearings. I mean, again, it shouldn't be something that kills a whole electric motor, the bearings on it, because you wouldn't have that. That's like saying if Alex's petrol Polo died with the wheel bearings went to a new car.
Yeah. Well, this is the analogy that I always give, because you always hear people say, oh, it's 30 grand for a new battery. It's like, well, that battery could actually be fixed. And, if you're taking your BMW M3 or your Audi S4, which is equivalent to a Tesla dual motor, for example, you're not going to take it to the main dealer and ask for a new engine, are you? You're going to take it to a specialist and get them to look at it, see what the problem is. So it works exactly the same with electric cars as well. Don't get me wrong.
Will be developed as we go along, as there's demand. There's not a huge amount of demand for them yet, so they don't exist.
I free charged in Northern Ireland from 2013 to 2022 that enabled to pay my mortgage off more quickly. Good work.
But I suppose that's what then adds to the people who kind of argue that it's for, because technically you could argue that's made you more wealthy by paying off a mortgage, but it's not. But it's one of those things. You always have those people who come back and argue that. You've probably seen a lot of my posts on LinkedIn when someone's come back and said, it's not for me. It's like, you're making it wealthier. And it's like, well, it's one of those things. It's not deliberate. It's just
There's some
good thing
quite cool. There's some quite cool workplace charging perks that are probably worth highlighting here. Is that if you carpool with somebody and their employer has got, so if you give somebody a lift to work, even though it's private mileage, and their employer has got charging points, you can use those charging points without being charged for it as a benefit. So you are allowed to use your own. As an employer, you can give that to your own employees, whether it's their car or somebody else's car. It's quite a nice little perk. Yeah.
You'd have to work quite close to them, wouldn't you? Otherwise, it's going to be a while to.
Yeah, if you worked on the same, say, business park, and you were in the building next door to them, or you were in the same building, like a high-rise building or something, and they had workplace charging points for their employers. For their employees, you are actually able to use that without being charged for it as a benefit. So
the benefiting kind for charging at work hasn't come in yet, has it?
No. Well, it was removed, even though I don't think anyone was really. About a few years ago, I think it was 5, 6, 7 years ago, there was nominally a BIK charge on it, but it was at that point energy was so cheap that nobody was really. It wouldn't have been worth. It wouldn't have been. It had no value, so it wasn't worth. It wasn't worth chasing up. But yeah, it is currently. You can provide workplace charging free, but not just for your employees' cars, but for somebody else in another business who is giving your employees a lift to work, which is a bizarre little kind of, but quite a nice perk if you're carpooling.
Because I still know some accountants that think it's BIK's doing it, so that's why an organisation I know has never opened them up to staff because they were said it was a BIK issue. But I might point them to that legislation.
All right. I'd probably be in my.
Charged when at leisure centre and while shopping in the early days. I know everyone by name, and we had a text group set up to help each other along, so we didn't need to hog charging. Good days. Yeah, absolutely.
I can put this in the private chat if you want to share it on screen.
Okay.
So, because I don't think I can share my screen.
I will. Here we go.
2018.
Yeah, because that will be useful for a lot of people who don't. Because I saw it's quite nuanced. It wasn't really announced, so people don't really.
Anyone see that?
This is the kind of nerdery that I get kind of caught up in. So, from 6th of April 2018, where an individual is provided with workplace facilities for charging the battery of a vehicle used by them, including as a passenger, no taxable benefit arises in respect of costs related to the provision of electricity at those facilities if certain conditions are met. So yeah, it's you can use those facilities and not be taxed for it.
Wow. Okay.
Quite a nice little exemption, that, but it's not one that gets kind of widely kind of discussed. I mean, there's a known quantity on the BIK front, but not that you can use it as a if you're giving somebody a lift to their workplace and plugging into their employer's charging points.
So if we make a little list of kind of the solutions, so obviously people with driveways, they're lucky. We've got people that can potentially benefit from the Charge Gully. We've got lamppost charging. I think surely lamppost charging's got to be. They can only charge at sort of 3.5 kilowatts, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things with that have benefited older estates because remember the old yellow sodium lights? They switched them to LED. They were quite high current, so they actually have quite a thick cable for all those lamps, so you could benefit from that. The disadvantage now is lots of newer ones are designed with LED in mind, so they haven't rated the cables for that ability. And a lot of them, I don't know if it's the same for Alex in Cardiff, a lot of the lampposts in Wales are set back against the houses. So the issue with that is that you then have to, you still have a cable because it's the wrong side of the street.
Who's the, I can't remember his name now. He does the Microlino vehicle.
Ben McDonald.
That's it. Yeah, so they've got the kind of cable that goes over the pathway, haven't they?
Yeah, I've seen this, yeah.
Yeah, there's no guidance for them yet, but that is another potential solution. But I think
I suppose the issue with
it's locally set as well. The rules for trailing a cable or having a sorry, Kevin, I'm talking over, but the rules are the same. They're set locally. There's no national guidance for it. there's no specific thing nationally forbidding it or allowing it or setting any rules for it. It's all set by local. And again, you could if you cross local authority boundaries, you could have some employees who can take a van home, charge it, and run a cable over the pavement, and it's fine. And some employees who are on the same payroll doing the same job with the same van who can't do it down the road. It's nuts.
Well, sorry, Kev. Yeah, you go. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, I think the problem with the overhead one is people are still worried about the liability of it because of the height is kind of, they're worried that you get a lot of drunk people start using it as a chin-up bar and then you get the injuries of that. So it's because a lamppost, you can't do that. But saying that, in Powys, I've noticed lots of lampposts now have had that, that anti-grip stuff put above 6 foot, so people can't climb them. So they put that like grease so you can't climb them because they had issues with people climbing lampposts.
It'd be like a scene out of Home Alone.
Nails the bottom.
That's it. Yeah. So I mean, we've talked about all the challenges. We've talked about some of the solutions, but what about the people that want to have an EV, or they might not want an EV? They might be not forced, but encouraged, let's just say for argument's sake, to go EV. What are the other solutions out there? How can people charge cheaply that can't benefit from Gully charging and lamppost charging? You guys got any ideas of what the best? I say just buy a Tesla because the charging's cheaper. But do you guys know of any cheaper particular chargers out there? Any particular cheaper networks out there?
Well, the Tesla network, obviously, some of them are open now. I mean, our local Tesla chargers, we've plugged in there with the van, and there's quite often DPD vans charging outside, which is quite interesting. I mean, they're bloody huge, those vans, kind of towering above the hedge outside the dealership. Tesla is my charging hack. A friend of mine actually went to Gatwick Airport before Christmas and said, if you were going to do that in an EQA, how would you get there? And I said, I'd stop off at Reading on the way back. And use Cobham as a if you need it on the way there, depending how confident you're feeling range wise. And you did a short top up at Cobham, looped back and plugged in at Reading at the Tesla chargers, and said, "I can't believe they were all empty while everyone was using the more expensive ones over the road." So yeah, Tesla's a really useful hack if you haven't got, because they're fast and they are the cheap. They are sometimes in line with if you go the right times with the AC networks.
The only thing I have found is there is a slight issue with modern 800-volt cars. So if I've charged an EV9 on one of them and my Ioniq 5, and you're limited to 84 kilowatts because it's onboard inverter that converts the 400 to 800 volts, can only do 84 kilowatts. They don't shout about that, but a lot of the Kia Hyundai Group stuff, if you're on a 400-volt charger, you don't get those ludicrous high speeds. So the EV9 is a good example. 84 kilowatts on a Tesla charger, which felt slow, weirdly. I never thought you'd say that 84 felt slow, but then I went to the Ionity, the one in Newport, and was getting 210 kilowatts. So, and the battery was warm and stuff. So, I mean, that's the one thing that can be a limit. And that was a V4 charge. I've tried that on a V4 and the older chargers. So they seem to still not support 800 volts. I think all the Tesla cars are still 400-volt architecture, aren't they? Alex will know more than me.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. Actually, the only Tesla that's 800-volt is Cybertruck. Yeah. So Yanni with his imported one, which whether he will get it UK registered, I know that he's battling hard to do that at the moment. So that'll be interesting to find out. But yeah, so the V4s are obviously the different looking ones, but how do you manage to charge? You got a Tesla app to get it to activate and stuff.
Yeah, some of them, quite a lot of them are contactless now, though, aren't they? As well.
Yeah, the V4 ones.
Actually, when I gave the recommendation, I use the app because it's great. Actually, the Tesla app for charging is brilliant. Works really, really, really well. Yeah. As most Tesla charging related things tend to. But yeah, you can use contactless on them as well. But you can obviously, with the app, you can watch the charging speeds in real time on your phone, which is great, which is pretty cool.
Can do that with an EV like a Hyundai. It's just your Rifter.
All right, yeah.
Real time.
The My Peugeot app is possibly the single worst part of the e-Rifter experience. It is dire. and it's exactly the same one that Vauxhall use and Citroen use as well. It's awful. It's just dreadful.
Well, I'm guessing that's the Stellantis special then, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, are there any other CPOs, any other kind of deals out there for charging that to keep the costs down?
I think now do off-peak, don't they, as well, I think?
Yeah.
Osprey as well. I think a few of them are starting to do off-peak.
But I mean, I would say possibly if you can combine it, if you can combine it with a shop and use the AC chargers at a supermarket, that's probably a useful way to kill two birds with one stone, and a little bit like filling up with fuel after you do the weekly shop.
Yeah. How much do Tesco? I know Sainsbury's have got Kempower, which will be more expensive because it's DC charging. They've got the hub and spoke system. I've seen certainly at Luton, but whoever designed the car park needs to be shot because the utilisation was awful. But what about Tesco's? How much are their pod point ones? Are they like
30 something from what I can remember? Yeah. The last time I used them was in Devon a few months ago. But they've got that. They've got what else have they got? I was looking at this earlier actually, and then they've got their tritium ones. I think they've got as well. So
they'll be replacing those soon though, because no one actually did bail tritium out, did they? So tritium doesn't exist anymore.
The ones at my workplace, they're Rolex ones. I can't remember the name of the CPO, but they're like 35p, which isn't the end of the world. But yeah, it's still, it just feels like there's not been enough done, and there's not enough planning being done. Dean's mentioned that it's a shame that there's not as many new EVs that have 22 kilowatt charging. It's probably because the onboard charge costs a lot more, so it's probably it costs down.
Because Renault got around that with because Renault's quite clever the way they've done the 22 kilowatt on board.
Well, it uses the motor, and that's why they run out, right? That's why they wear out.
Well, no, it doesn't actually spin the motor, though, does it? It's very clever. It uses the motor coils, so effectively, when you're doing 22 kilowatts AC on a Renault, effectively you're regenning it. So it's going through the system as if you're going down a long hill. So I do wonder, they say you're not supposed to tow a car to charge. As long as you don't go over 22 kilowatts from the Renault, I'm sure you should be able to tow charge it, shouldn't you? Because it's designed to continuously run at 22.
Yeah, it's just frustrating, I think. It's just frustrating that there is this kind of, there's no solution. I suppose
then going back to that 22, the charge regulations have made that not as cost effective now for people to supply it because you need a contactless reader.
Yeah.
So you'll end up that if you do it, you'll probably end up charging the same as you charge for your DC charging.
Do you think they can change that? They're not going to go back and change that, are they? It's very unlikely.
I think that's set in stone now, isn't it?
You don't have to retrofit AC stuff. It's only over 50k that you've got to retrofit it. But yeah, now people should be looking to install three-phase stuff, shouldn't they?
You've got to retrofit everything 8 kilowatt and above from November last year.
No, you've got to fit it to new installations of 8 kilowatt and above, and all installations of 50 kilowatt, regardless of age.
I've learned something today. I didn't know that, so that's good. That's very interesting.
I'm going to double check it before I say that because I'm.
You've already said it, mate.
No, before I'm sure I should know this off by heart, but yeah, it's. So...
I always wondered how the Renault Chameleon 22 kilowatt charger worked.
And I'm guessing more cars haven't got it because there's probably some patent Renault have on doing it that way.
The regulations require that all new public charge points 8 kilowatt and above deployed after 24th November and all public charge points 50 kilowatt and above must offer contactless payment. So the good news is if you've got an existing charger installed that would fall under the scope of those regulations, as long as it's an existing one, you don't have to retrofit it, as long as it's under 50 kilowatt, which is
or until it breaks.
Sorry?
Or until it breaks.
Yeah.
Or until it breaks, then you're stuck. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to mention any brand names for that one.
But again, if you're talking about workplace charging and so on, if you're offering that, and you are, say you're an employer and you've got like a fleet of vans, but after work, say after work hours or during the day when they're not in use, maybe you have those chargers and you offer them to people. The incentive is removed because the rules apply to depot-based charging as well. So if you're installing chargers and you think, well, I'm going to make a bit of extra money by allowing people to use those, then you've removed the incentive there for them to have faster charging rates. You're going to limit it, aren't you? Because there's no point. Which is a counterintuitive, really. But I think standardizing contactless payment is really important. I think it's a step in the right direction, but there's going to be categories obviously within that.
Yeah, no, for sure. You guys got anything else to add? I think I'm pretty much spent on the subject. I'm trying to stay positive. But guys, what you guys got this week? Have you got much going on?
In at the deep end, catching up on where I was. Trying to remember where I was 2 weeks ago. That's my first day back tomorrow after Christmas. So I can't remember where I am with anything. It's going to be a bit of in at the deep end job.
What about yourself, Kev?
I've got again sort of in at the deep end, starting work on in the day job on a multi 22 kilowatt charging arrays with a 61 kilowatt hour battery storage array to balance the grid. So it'll always trickle into that because it's on a grid limited supply because it's got a big sewage treatment plant that always consumes free kit. So to enable the cars, it's going to have a big battery there, which I have joked that people said they'd like a ton of batteries on that site. They didn't literally think it is. It's 950 kilos, so it is literally a ton of batteries. So if you want to know how much 61 kilowatt hours of stationary storage using LFP can weigh, it's 950 kilos.
Oh, it's an LFP as well.
For stationary storage, you generally do LFP because you need more cycles, and you've got to remember this is always trickling in. So think of it like the way I'd think of it is like a big, if you have some places where you've got low water pressure, like a business site, and you have that big header tank which slowly fills so that everyone can use the facilities there.
Yeah.
So
that sounds like an interesting project. I think batteries is going to be huge this year with potential power issues from the grid and that sort of thing. And I know of quite a few battery storage companies that are going to be pushing hard. I'm sure lots of technology going on in that arena. This week, I'm back at work, although I've been working all the way through. Got a very busy week. Off Friday, because Friday I'm going to be in Bridport and Top Gear going to be fitting the Thor speaker exhaust system to Rusty. So that should be fun. So if you hear a horse coming and you see a Tesla, you know it's me. I'm definitely going to start with animal noises because I think that's going to be highly amusing. If you hear a Lamborghini, it's definitely not me because I'm not going to do Lamborghini noises and all of that stuff because that's just not.
So, you know what? Interesting talking about noise. So I mean, the Cyberster that I've been driving over Christmas went back last Thursday.
Oh, it's gone now. Yeah.
I actually thought, as much as I don't want synthesized engine noise, I do think that just that little bit of audible feedback would have just enhanced that car. That little bit. Yeah. It was just even like a hum or a whir or a kind of just a background noise, just to give you some sense of how hard the car's working. Just would have just added a little bit to it. So I can see some sense in it, which I was less prepared for. So I'm interested to try the Ioniq 5N when I finally get my paws on it.
It sounds pretty good, and it's a good car. But I would say that the BMW and the Mini, they've got the sounds really, really nice on that.
And again, they don't sound like engines, which I think is the right way to go. I don't think you should be trying to make them sound like engines.
No. Sorry, Kev, what did you say?
I did experience the madness of the Cyberstar.
Oh yeah,
with Alex, without the roof up, but he did insist on the roof had to be down. But...
Yeah, and it started raining like quite a lot. So
that's interesting that Tesla don't sell home batteries to Northern Ireland because the grid frequency is different. Very interesting.
Yeah, because I would have thought that would just be a software inverter thing that you just set it for the frequency, so the batteries don't really care because the batteries are always DC, aren't they? So it's the inverter that's the frequency. I assumed Ireland was 50 hertz, the same as because America's 60 hertz, isn't it? Europe's all 50 hertz. I'm just wondering how the interconnects work between Ireland and that because they're going to have to change the frequency, aren't they? Mm-hmm. So I'd be interested to know what the frequency is in Northern Ireland now.
we await for Commuter Branch Line to let us know what the frequency is. I'm pretty sure he probably knows what it is. So,
Yeah.
but other than that, yeah, it's yeah. I was at a car meet actually on Saturday, and the video's coming out on Wednesday. Got a short little video on TikTok and YouTube Shorts, and we had 3 Teslas modified next to each other, loads of other cool cars, all sorts of different vehicles. One of my favorite was an original Saab 900, real cool thing, like an A-Reg, I think it was, and a 260Z. But we had loads of people asking questions about the Teslas, like asking about range and this, that, the other. That's why I love going to those sort of events, because you actually have a proper conversation with people, because people are genuinely interested, and it tends to be that they've heard all the, stuff online, which tends to be slightly sided on one side or the other, and you can just give them a kind of a true kind of reflection. But it looks like Computer Branch Line has gone to sleep, or he's gone now. But guys, thanks everyone for listening in. Don't forget to like, share the video, and we'll be back next week, and we're going to be talking about EVs on motor tracks, on circuits, motorsport, essentially. So we might even have a special guest on that as well. Here we go. I know of one mega pack in the hospital in Belfast, but that was the reason I was told. Okay, interesting. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening in, everyone, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks, guys, for joining us, Kev and Alex.
Yeah, thanks a lot. See ya.